Hello, ESL teachers. This is Speak Up English Talk Resources, and I'm a store at the Teachers Pay Teachers website, and I specialize in designing conversation lessons for ESL students, and they include children's lessons, high school and adult lessons as well. So take a look at this one. Today, I'm going to present to you a conversation lesson on when is it safe to drink from plastic bottles. And this is for teenagers and adults at the intermediate level. So just to give you a brief introduction, my lessons come in three parts. The first part I'll show you, it's an introduction to some key vocabulary. So for example, this is the word emergency. There's a definition to it, and then there's a sample sentence. Okay, so and then another one, for example, microplastics. Microplastic, what does that mean, right? So here is a sample sentence. Okay, so as a teacher, you can get your student to read this, and you can even add questions or have some small talks over this vocabulary, right? Like, what's your view on microplastics? Do you think we can see microplastics? What does the word micro mean? Does that mean like big or very, very tiny, right? So something like that. And then I go on to talk about, oh, here's another one called contamination. What does that mean? And by the way, all my lessons come with very good images or visuals because these visuals are associated with the content of the material because it helps the students to learn and understand better. As the saying goes, right? The picture tells 1,000 words. So after the vocabulary section, then I start with the article. So the article is just a short article, and this is a way for the student to practice their reading and comprehension skill. So this is the cover page, and then each so the article is broken into a few pages, and each page has one or two sentences. I did it this way so that it's easier for the student to read instead of just reading like a full page of essay, which is very hard on the eye, and actually it makes them like lose interest. And this is actually better on the eye, and it's better like for online teaching. Okay, so this is the beginning of the article, and then it goes on to talk about why drinking from plastic bottles is actually not a good idea on a daily basis because of these tiny plastic particles that get released into the water. And then I go on to talk about how and also, if you keep your bottle in your car or you keep it under the sun, then microplastics gets released into the bottle, into the water. Okay, and it talks about the side effects that could cause right in the human body. And then next here, and just talk about we should only consume water from a bottle, from a plastic bottle, if you're at a place in the world where there's no safe tap water to consume, right? So you really don't have a lot of choices. In these places, it's actually better to buy bottled water instead of drinking from the tap, right? And another problem is that even with like developed countries, in wealthy countries, tap water can sometimes cause problems too because of these old pipes. They're rusty and they're old, and the chemicals can get into the water supply. So that would be another reason why people should, consume water straight from a water bottle. So after this article, and by the way, while your student reads the article, you can engage in more conversation, keep chatting away and keep letting the students speak. Okay. It is actually recommended that you don't, interrupt the student. Just let them talk. And then maybe every 5 or 6 sentences, you notice an error, then you correct them. So for example, the most common mistake that I come across is using like verb conjugates. For example, like, students usually say something like, my mom do something, right? So my mom, right, is a third person, right? So it should be does. So I would just give them a gentle reminder, but I don't want to like interrupt them while they're speaking. So when they're done talking about the part, then I can just like go ahead and tell them, oh, it's my mom does, right? Or another common mistake is they get confused with the tenses. So for example, they would say something like, oh, yesterday I will go shopping, but this is like from yesterday. So I would just correct them and say, oh, yesterday I went shopping, right? Just like, it's just some gentle reminders. So after this is done, then this is the meat, the bread and butter, right, of the whole lesson. It's the question and answer period. So I have a total of like 8 or 9 questions. So they're thought provoking. So, for example, this one, right? Is plastic the greatest invention or the biggest mistake? So, these questions are you're asking for the student's opinion and also their personal experiences and their views. And then you can add your own, you can share your own personal experiences and your views as well. And you can follow the question because these slides are meant to save you time and they're meant to be no prep. But if you do have some additional questions that you can come up with, then certainly feel free to throw them in. So here is another one, right? Example: what plastic items do you use on on a typical day, right? And name them. So this is the way to get them to practice their vocabulary, right? Like for example, plastic bottles, like plastic hairbrush or whatever, right? Plastic bags, sandwich bags, things like that. And I have like a bunch of like questions. For example, are you worried about plastic in the food and water? You get the gist. So if you are interested, so feel free to drop by my TPT store, my Teachers Pay Teacher store, and the link is in the bio. Okay, bye.